Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to our on-demand session. My name is Nicole Baldessari and I'm joined here by my colleague.
I'm Ellen Farr. I'm an instructional designer at the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at the College of New Jersey. I'm in my 23rd year at the College of New Jersey, so I'm fairly new to the role of instructional design. I've stepped into that after when the pandemic started. Kudos to Rutgers. I do have my doctorate in design of learning environments from Rutgers Graduate School of Education. So props to all the Rutgers alum out there and current students. I know what you're going through. I also, in addition to my position as an instructional designer, I also teach a variety of classes. I think it's really important to still be involved with what the students are doing and have very active experiences in order to better inform my suggestions as an instructional designer. So this semester, I'm teaching first year seminar, which is a small scale 16 student class, and we're exploring the universality of fairy tales, which is a really fun class. And I also teach a graduate level course, Assistive Technology, which is for pre-service special education teachers. So they're going to be graduating in May and hopefully becoming special education teachers in the fall.
Amazing. And my name is Nicole Baldessari. I'm the head of partnerships and sales here at InSpace. I've been in ed tech my entire career. As a first gen college graduate myself, I've always been looking for hacks or new tech and ways to improve that student experience for others that were maybe in the same shoes. So throughout my career, have been on all sides of campus technology, from enrollment to marketing and communications, alumni development, and now here at InSpace. We've come here together to talk a little bit about TCNJ's journey piloting InSpace for blended learning on campus and online. And what we kind of wanted to explore here together today is sort of the motivation behind why TCNJ chose InSpace, how they, scaffolded this pilot, recruited instructors, how it's going, because we are still, exploring and working together and finding new use cases from teaching and learning all the way through student support. And then leave you with a few practical tips for increasing engagement, because I think we're all sick and tired of the cameras off and mute buttons on, and we just want to feel a little bit more human in the virtual classroom. So keeping this very conversational for everybody. We are not the stuffy presenters. We want this to be super open conversation and hope that y'all reach out to us afterwards. We can leave our LinkedIn and our emails if you're curious. But I kind of want to start, putting you on the spot, Ellen. I remember your demo request coming in last year, the end of the summer, and I'm kind of curious, what really prompted that interest in seeking new virtual conferencing solutions?
Sure. Thank you for asking. It's a pleasure to be here and share with you my experiences with InSpace to date. We've gotten a very positive response on campus, even though we've rolled it out very slowly and have a limited audience. We're continuing to grow. TCNJ has traditionally been a residential in-person class experience. As everyone knows, when we were forced to shut down and go to remote emergency teaching, attitudes kind of shifted, and we kind of started to see an opportunity to increase some of our blended online programs, particularly in the graduate realm. I think everyone will agree that students have changed their expectations for what their learning looks like. And I was looking for something that enabled us to replicate a classroom experience in the virtual world. Zoom is fine. We've been using Zoom for 3 years. It's functional. Students understand how to use it. It's easy to use. But there were components to it that didn't quite reach the audience that I was looking for. It didn't allow the students to interact as they would in the classroom. I had seen a demo of InSpace, and it really caught my attention immediately because it seemed like something that would be more human and allow students to communicate with each other more so than you can in Zoom. Zoom is very business-like. It's great for a meeting space. Here, someone's going to share some information. There's going to be, questions that are asked. maybe some side chats, but the business space is not what we're looking for an educational opportunity.
Yeah, and I think just piggybacking off of that, it is very one-sided when it comes to those business tools that we're all so used to, because it's more of a content delivery mechanism versus a connection and sense of belonging like you would experience in the physical classroom. And just beyond TCNJ, I think higher education in general, some of the more traditional, in-person institutions, we saw that pandemic flexibility, not only students enjoying, being able to be wherever they want and go to class, but also us, right, as staff and educators, having that flexibility is really important. And moving forward, there are ways to preserve that culture and tradition that you get on campus with a virtual platform like InSpace. I guess this is a nice segue for me to talk into how we were founded. We actually were founded by Dr. Noreen Hall. She was a professor at Champlain College up in Vermont, and she was a pandemic, emergency remote teacher, and she realized real quick those mute buttons were turning on and the cameras were turning off, and she had no idea if what she was saying was resonating with students or if they were watching Netflix in a different tab or doing their laundry. Like, there was just no accountability in the virtual space for that emergency remote instruction. And so what she did is say, all right, well, if cameras are off and mute buttons are on, how can I get students to engage and open up and know that they're actually following me? So something like movement, where I'm clicking on myself moving around, I can give Ellen a little high five, show her some love as my co-presenter here. These are subtle ways that actually create a much more active learning environment. So even if I did, turn off my camera and I wasn't here, you still see I'm paying attention, like, yeah, I'm following along, I got you. And of course, there are other components of the platform that attribute to this feeling of let's be a little bit more human again. And I'm sure Ellen will talk about how instructors have been enjoying some of these components. But to kind of zoom out from the features, really going back to three pillars. It's all about agency, autonomy, and shared experience. And that's what creates a virtual classroom culture that motivates and supports students every step of the way. So it's not this top-down experience of, you have to ask me to turn on closed captions. You could do that yourself, as you should. Or, I set up breakout rooms and I just appear whenever I want, and you're very much caught off guard. It shouldn't be that top-down experience. We need to include the students and their voices more so in the online space in order to truly achieve that sense of equity. So that's kind of InSpace's humble beginnings. We were a pandemic baby, but now with partners like TCNJ, really starting to see the traction of where these digital experiences can make a huge impact on the student journey and experience with your institution.
That really drew me to InSpace is that it was unlike the business like Zoom, it was designed to be student centered. So, how can we have students take responsibility for themselves in the classroom, whether it's online or it's actually in a classroom? And I believe that InSpace allows the students the ability to control where they are,
Mm-hmm.
who they talk to, where they place themselves, whether they're muted or they have their cameras on or off. If you notice, we're in a discussion room with a white line around the border. If we were to leave this discussion room together, we would be in like a hallway. So we could still talk to each other, but icon went to just her picture. So I know that she's still here and present, but maybe she needed to step out in the hallway for a minute. She needed to have a phone conversation, or perhaps she came in late or she just allowed herself to wander off and think of something else and she missed what the instructor said. So she doesn't know what she's supposed to be doing. So she could leave the room, and then she could invite a friend over, and the friend could join her. She could ask the question, what are we doing? I don't know what we're doing. And then come back into the space. So the instructor can see they're still engaged, they're still participating, but for whatever reason, they need to leave. We never chase a student that has left the classroom out in the hallway and say, where are you going? Why are you doing this? Right?
Right.
You give them that autonomy and ability to make these decisions on their own. So I think it's really nice, unlike a platform like Zoom, where if you needed to leave, you're leaving. You can say, I'll be right back, or you can turn your camera off, but you're not quite sure if anybody is really still there or not. So InSpace does give us the ability to not only see when our students are participating in the classroom. If we had breakout rooms turned on, perhaps we could turn on breakout rooms now, and we can show what that looks like.
Let's do it.
So with breakout rooms turned on, you would notice that you have different areas, and you as the instructor can see exactly what is happening in the breakout room. Now, you might not see the student's video, you wouldn't see if they were sharing something on the screen, but you would be able to tell that they're speaking because their circle has lit up. So right now I'm talking, my circle is blue. If I stop talking and Nicole starts talking,
Or if we talk at the same time, because InSpace does allow for that natural overlap
mhm,
in communication, and it doesn't
mhm,
interrupt or do that weird dominant speaker where it's that choppy
right,
fighting for the mic. Now we can actually have a true conversation like we would in person, where Ellen can give me those affirmations and I can say, okay, I'm not a crazy person, like she's agreeing with what I'm saying. So those
right.
moments of overlap become so important, especially in a classroom environment, to help support the learning.
Indeed. So as an instructor, you have breakout rooms turned on, and you can see your students are in the breakout rooms. You can see very quickly if no one's talking or if one person's doing all the talking, but you also can enter the breakout room by dragging yourself into the space, and the students can see you coming. So it's not this surprise, a person has just dropped in out of the blue and startled them, but you can see them coming, they can prepare themselves. And I think that really plays a lot into this idea of student-centered learning. We're giving students the knowledge that we respect them, and we're giving them a heads up that we're about to join their conversation, just like you would do in a classroom. So if your students are working in groups in a classroom, you hear the mutterings, but you can't hear what everyone's saying until you join into the classroom. So InSpace takes advantage of a feature called proximity audio, which is one of my favorites. And I sort of touched on that a little bit, but I would like Nicole to explain it a little more.
Yeah. So essentially, when you turn on proximity audio, the closer you are to someone, the more you're able to hear them. So as you can see, when I walk up to somebody, I'm starting to hear their audio a little bit more. Their picture gets bigger. And with that, it simulates a real life conversation. And you can have multiple conversations simultaneously in the same space with a shared view of everybody in that space. But that natural curiosity starts to spark up because I can see, oh, those blue rings are lighting up. I'm going to move my circle so I can hear a little bit better to understand what they're talking about. And I think the more of those human moments that we can bring to the online space, especially the more moments of curiosity and inspiration for students to participate and take ownership of their experience, the better, especially with how things are today with online learning. So definitely proximity audio, a huge benefit. But I think to zoom out from, the breakout rooms and the proximity and some of these great features, Ellen, I'd be so curious, how did you get this pilot program started? Because I know these are the features that really drew the team to it and got you excited and ready to move forward. But it takes a lift to pull together a pilot program. So I'd love to hear more about the mechanics or behind the curtain of how you got this started on campus.
Sure, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, TCNJ has traditionally been an in-person class structure. As we have faculty who decide to teach blended or online, they do go through a brief training. It's depending on when they do it, a 5 to 9 week training that the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning runs. In that space, they learn how to translate their in-person class to an online environment. So we talk a lot about what makes good pedagogy in an online environment, what's different, what do you need to do to keep students engaged. So we have pockets of instructors who are beginning to teach blended online courses. And I started there. I looked at for the fall semester which instructors were going to be teaching a course in which they had a synchronous component. So anyone who was planning to use Zoom for their synchronous component, I invited to a demonstration of InSpace, got them excited about it, and offered them the opportunity to try InSpace for one or two of their classes, the whole semester, whatever they felt comfortable with. So we had in the first pilot group about 10 instructors who used it to varying degrees. Some only met their class synchronously twice, and they used InSpace both times. They reported very positive results, as well as the students did. Other instructors opted not to use it for their face-to-face component, their synchronous component. Instead, they used it for office hours. So I did have instructors who were teaching an asynchronous class, but they had synchronous office hours. So they were able to meet with the students in that manner. So it's been kind of a casual introduction to the platform, because I wanted to see what the mood on campus was during the fall semester and see who was really engaged, and was this something that the TCNJ community might embrace. And because I received the positive feedback, we decided to extend the pilot to the spring semester. So we've had a total of approximately 23 instructors now who have used it with their classes. Our class size run in size between 16 students approximately to 23, 24. I don't know that we had any instructors who had a class size larger than that. However, what we also started to do was this semester was we've had some offices that aren't teaching directly try it out. So for example, our tutoring center has used it for the tutors town hall, which was a different kind of platform, more auditorium presentation to the individuals who were going to become tutors. And they've also used it for one-on-one tutoring. So we're starting to see excitement build. In fact, we just finished a session about half an hour ago where we had 20 participants. We had deans, librarians, student services staff, instructors who were all interested in hearing more about what it has to offer.
And just to touch back on that tutoring town hall, because I actually got to attend, there were over 100 people in that space, and they were so excited, I think, to break free of the square and be able to move around room to room and just play again and be excited. And some of those tutors being, students themselves, those peer mentors almost. It was just amazing to see that sort of initial, I can do that, those moments of aha come to life, even outside of the traditional teaching and learning classroom setting. But you also touched on the asynchronous piece, which I think is really important today for a lot of schools who are starting, online programs or adding more online programs. They might look at a video like this and say, okay, that's great for synchronous, but I don't understand, what this means for an asynchronous course where I don't have that interaction. And just like TCNJ's answer to that, I think office hours is the easiest way to get the most bang for your buck with a platform like this, because there is such a missed opportunity in that traditional waiting room setting. So for example, if I open up 2 rooms and I might name one as the waiting room and one as the office. From here, now I don't have students sitting behind that please wait for the host to join, that brick wall almost of no transparency into what number I am, when I'll be served. I might just leave because I have no idea. And we don't want to turn students away from something as important as office hours. So now if Ellen and I go into the waiting room, we can have a whiteboard open where I might ask students to add questions via sticky note. And I can come in from my office and see, oh, wow, everybody has the same exact question. Why don't we just do a group session where we can answer this versus me having, 5 back-to-back 15 minutes of appointments where I'm saying the same thing over and over and over again. That's not a great use of anybody's time, right? So this adds that level of transparency where I can see, okay, my students are all fantastic drawers or artists, but also, wow, everybody has the same question around problem set 26. So it's just a really quick clue into what students are thinking. And for the students that do join this waiting room, this is a happenstance, informal learning moment, right? They're here at the same time for the same purpose. It's not, that organized fun of like a Zoom happy hour or trivia night. This is just a genuine moment of connection where, I might pick up a little small talk. I might make a friend that was from a different section that I never would have interfaced before had there not been this level of transparency in office hours. We might even solve each other's questions, right? Like we might we might be in here talking, have the same exact problem, figure it out together and leave, and then the instructor comes over and goes, "Oh my god, where did everybody go?" "Oh, well, they just figured it out for themselves." Awesome, right? That's a win-win all around. So if I scope out to this bird's eye view, I can always keep a pulse on who's in the waiting room, are they speaking or not? But I can also go over to my office and, I can have this one-on-one conversation with Ellen while others are in the waiting room chatting with each other. And a nice thing too is if you want to maintain the privacy of your conversations, you can actually lock the door. So any students who come in will actually bounce off of the wall. Ellen and I both have the keys to this office since we're hosts of the space. But you can imagine what this might look like when a student comes in, just like having knocking on the door. Their circle would sort of bounce off the wall. And again, it highlights those subtle social cues that go totally missing when you're sitting behind a blank screen.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought this up. So I want to introduce an example that I use. So I teach first year writing for freshmen. It's a required course for all of our freshmen. And I teach that in a traditional in-classroom experience. It's a lovely setting. It's 16 students. It's intensive writing. But we do one-on-one writing appointments. And so this year I began using InSpace for that instead. First of all, it's helped with student transition because I'm not sitting in a classroom waiting for a student who's running late. It's much easier for them to pop in on their phone if they're running late across campus or to join from anywhere. They really do prefer it. A lot of them actually just want to stay in their pajamas and join from their dorm room,
Don't we
which
all?
is completely fine. Exactly. So what I do is I set up the platform exactly like this. Sometimes I call the waiting room the hangout space, and I'm sure they're rolling their eyes at me, but that's okay.
I like
So,
that.
so they make appointments, and I do lock the room that I'm in. I'm always hanging out in room 2, and they have certain times they can come in. But when they join the waiting room, they see that I'm in with someone. They can't hear what we're saying. They don't see our faces, but they can see that I'm talking or the other student is talking. So it takes away that uncertainty of, am I in the right spot? Do I have the right link? Is there somebody on the other side? And then I can either unlock my room or I can hover over their icon and I can, well, if you were a bit away, I could invite you over. So then when I finish with someone, I can invite the next student in. So it's a very seamless transition. What I really like about it is the idea that we can share the student's document in the space, and that allows us both to look at it together. They're usually on their computer as well, making changes or taking notes, but we can see it together. So it's not, oh, you're looking at page 3, I'm looking at page 1. No, I'm in the second paragraph, you're on the 5th page. So it's very easy to coordinate what we're looking at because the student is sharing their screen or I'm sharing my screen and we're scrolling through the document together. So the students have really responded quite positively to that. And again, it saves time. The students come in, they know who's next. They know if somebody's already in there. And if no one is in there, if they come in, let's say somebody didn't show up for their appointment, I can invite the student over. So I'm not waiting for a whole 15-minute time slot to expire if the next person has shown up.
You know what? I'm going to go to the hangout room and you go ahead and invite me over so that they can see what we're talking about.
She'll get a notice.
Boom. Just like that.
And what did it look like for you? Did you receive a notice, a pop-up?
Yep, just a little notification that says Ellen has invited you over and go to.
Yep, exactly. So it's really simple for the students to navigate. And you've eliminated that guesswork of, is somebody even here? Because students are not going to hang out for long.
No,
If they see that screen that says, please wait for the host to let you in, and they're giving you 10 seconds and they're like, my time slot's now, I'm leaving. So we
exactly.
don't want students to leave. We want to be able to help them.
Yeah, I
And
think about when I call into the pharmacy and I have no idea how long I'm going to be on hold. Unfortunately, I am that psycho that will leave it on for 30 minutes until I get a hold of someone. But there are times where I'm like, all right, I have 5 minutes in between meetings. Can I quickly, fulfill a prescription? And it's like,
yeah.
no, I probably can't because I have no sense of when I'll get a chance to connect. But
I'm
same
sure we've
concept
all
applies.
been in that same experience in a Zoom meeting or in a Google Meet. It's not just Zoom. I'm using
Right.
Zoom kind of as like the generic virtual platform, meeting platform.
Like cleaning.
I'm not picking on Zoom itself, but that idea. So I've been in waiting behind that waiting room wall, and colleagues have texted me, are you in yet? Do I have the right one? Did I get the wrong time? So you eliminate that uncertainty, because again, colleagues will wait. You have a meeting at 2 o'clock, you understand somebody's running behind, they're going to give the grace. Students might not wait. They might say, no, you weren't here when I thought you were going to be, I'm leaving, I guess class is canceled. We don't want them to leave.
Right. They are so quick to say, "Oh, it's 2 minutes late. Class is canceled. I'm out of here." Like they are ready to have that pass. Um,
Exactly.
absolutely. So I'm gonna
So that brings up another point, is that I wanted to mention, got to unlock that room first. I wanted to mention the idea that this integrates so well with Canvas. And that was another selling point for why we wanted to test it out. The idea that students don't have to know a separate link. They don't have to go somewhere else. Now, other platforms do integrate with Canvas, so that is also seamless. But there are 3 components to Canvas that are just a little bit different. So you have your classroom space, you have your office space. So if you turn that on, it would be the replica of what the 2 breakout rooms you just saw. So you don't have to set anything up in advance. And there's the student space. And what I really have found, that students have appreciated that student space. That means that's available to them 24/7 in their Canvas course. They can meet with each other to work on projects, whether it's something I assign or they just decide to meet up on their own, and they can record content in there as well. So if I ask my students to create a 2-minute skit on the fairy tale that they're working on for their first year seminar course, they can go into that space, record it. Again, this is an in-person class that I'm using this for. They can record it and they don't have to worry about uploading it to a separate spot. They just share it with me as the instructor. We also can share with all students so everyone can see it. So it just makes it a little more seamless, and one less thing that students have to remember to have to do. So it cuts down on the level of instructions that you have to provide for the students, and enables them to um, get to the task of learning and reducing the cognitive load of figuring out the tools in which they have to use to get to that learning.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. The less I have to remember, the better. And the more repetitive the tasks become of like, okay, it's time for class. I go to the classroom. Same thing as I would do in person. I go to the classroom for class. I click in space. I go right to the classroom. How do we replicate what is known and what are those daily habits to make it as easy as possible for those students to succeed in their course and succeed in the learning? And that's the beauty, I think, of the LMS integration. And of course, we're showing Canvas for TCNJ today, but InSpace is also available in the other popular LMS like Brightspace, Moodle, and Blackboard too.
So, coming along with that idea of reducing cognitive load
Mhm.
and getting to the content area that you want the students to know, I've also found that there are built in ways to do some formative assessment very easily with students. So, I don't know, Nicole, if you want to pull up one of the backgrounds that would allow us to
Absolutely. I'll
quickly
knock the
demonstrate
walls
this.
down too.
Yeah, do that. Thanks.
I'm going to do a fun one because that is just my jam. So when we're talking formative assessments, I'm thinking something like this where I need to understand, are you a cat person or a dog person? And luckily, Ellen and I are friends and we are
Yeah.
both cat people. But just imagine how powerful a moment like this is. Again, cameras can be off and mute buttons can be on. That's totally fine. But to have that element of movement and connect whatever that background, it could be fun at first just to break the ice and get them going, but then it could be something more related to the content you're presenting to kind of bring it back to, all right, this is class time, let's have a little bit of structure. But it's
Hmm.
those icebreaker moments that truly do open up the classroom, don't you think, Ellen?
Oh, I totally agree. So this is great for getting students acclimated to using the platform, moving themselves around, seeing that they have that autonomy to make decisions. Do you happen to have the strongly agree, disagree background?
Yes.
What I really like about this one, so let's say that I presented to you a rhetorical argument and I've asked you to write a paper on it. And I said, are we clear? Do we understand? Now, that's not something I would actually say. I would never say, do you understand? But if I said, you've read the assignments and guidelines, are you ready to walk out of here and start your paper? I could ask the students to put themselves to wherever I just lost myself, put them to wherever they think that they are or are not in relation to their ability. Again, I lost myself. To I definitely agree. I see it. It's telling me I strongly agree that I'm ready to write this assignment. So you could have the students organize themselves, and maybe they might be a little hesitant at first because they don't want to be the first person that
Right.
says, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea. So they might kind of hang out in the middle, and then they'd see a couple people would probably, and the more comfortable they are with each other, and depending on when it is in the semester, some might say, yeah, I'm on the fence, but I kind of disagree with what you're saying. So I can do one of two things at this point. I can open up 4 breakout rooms and they can talk, and I can jump in and out of those rooms very quickly and say, okay, so you disagreed that you understand what's going on. Let's talk about that. What questions do you have? And the students that strongly agree they're ready to write, I could say, all right, discuss what you think your thesis might be.
Mm.
And they can have a conversation to begin the writing process while I'm helping out the students who might need a little more um, support. Now, I might not open up breakout rooms at all. I might just write down or keep track. Okay, I had 4 students who said strongly disagree. So I am going to ask them for more information, or maybe I'll send them an email later. It depends on where we are in the class and how many students, et cetera. But I have this understanding now of who is still struggling with the material and who feels that they're confident. And it's just a matter of dragging yourself. So, right, cameras off, microphones off. I can see that the students are still participating. If the person hangs out in the bottom corner and never moves, despite me changing my screen 3 times, I know they're probably not really attending to what's going on. So that's really a crucial item, as Nicole just mentioned, with having her microphone off and her camera off.
And I'm back, just like
Yeah, exactly.
that.
So I think that, oh, go ahead, Nicole.
I was just going to say, I think when you touched on that human behavior of like starting in the middle and then like inching your way over once you feel more comfortable, something that we've seen too is this, this actual psychology of, okay, if everybody's in the no's and I was in the yeses, you actually start to see that student move closer, closer, closer to the no's. And it's those natural moments that remind you why this is all worthwhile online, right? It's like you finally get to see that true student interaction and behavior that it's just not possible when you're locked down in a grid of squares. Or even worse, you launch a poll and they click a button.
Right.
Whoop-de-doo, that's the pinnacle of engagement online, right? And I just don't think that that should be our standard when that's not something that happens in person. We need to get as close as possible in order to have those students look back on these classes that they've taken online or async, whatever it might be, and say, wow, Ellen was my favorite teacher and we did these activities. Like, we need to create those bonds and that cognition of a very meaningful experience and use of their time, because time is valuable, as we all know, and that's no different for students.
Oh, indeed. I couldn't have said it better myself. This idea that there is something that's going on, that we need to allow students to express themselves in the way that they feel comfortable. And that's another thing I like about InSpace, is that it's a smaller space. So students might not have their cameras on for a variety of reasons. But perhaps as more students and you build that culture of sharing, more students become more comfortable turning their cameras on. It's a smaller space. If you notice, my background is blurred.
Mhm.
So it's not really clear what's behind me. If I'm not able to sit in front of a blank um, screen, at least there's not my entire atmosphere that's being shown to the whole class, if that's something that a student has concerns with. All right. So, something else that I thought of that I wanted to share is that you have, as the instructor, the ability to share your screen, of course. You have the option to screen share, to collaborate, to share YouTube videos, whiteboard, you showed earlier, Nicole showed, PowerPoint or PDF. I'm just going to share my screen real quick and show you a presentation window that I have. And the reason on that I'm sharing this with you is, if you notice, it dropped Nicole and I to the bottom of the screen. If I change this to presentation room, yeah, we get these circles. So if you have a classroom full of students, everyone appears in the same order, which is really nice. So you could have, I know that Nicole is sitting to my right, to my left, depending on how I'm looking at my computer. But everyone appears in the same order. So it's not, oh, who's the next person to go? And you're wondering, the host is like, I'm just going to go in the order that I see you. And you don't know what that is. So you're like, oh no, am I the next person to go? Am I the last
Right, that
person to go?
popcorn moment of, is it me or who is it?
Yeah, exactly. So you stop listening to what other people say because you're wondering if your name is going to be called next. So everybody stays in the same order. But what I also really like about this is that you can ask your students to move themselves if they have questions. So, for example, you could say, if you have a question about what I'm presenting, could you drag yourself to the upper right? And then I'll see, as I'm talking, oh, Nicole has a question. I can make myself a little larger so the students know that I'm presenting on this information, and they can arrange themselves in whatever manner that they need to. So I think that this is a really helpful strategy to have. I have used InSpace. I should have mentioned earlier. I'm using InSpace with the instructors who are going through the blended and online course. So what's really wonderful is they're getting the experience as students. So they will be teaching blended online courses, but they're getting the InSpace experience as though they were students in the class. So it's really giving them a nice meta view of what it's like to be in the space, and have been very excited about the possibility of using this instead of a different conferencing or virtual platform. Did you want to add anything to that, Nicole?
No, I just think it's so great to see the student behavior, like, as I raised my hand and kind of shook my circle, pick me, pick me. Like,
Yeah.
those are things that can actually happen in the space. Or just like in person, I was the type of student who always claimed the same exact seat for lecture. Now you create those connections with the online classroom as well, where, if someone sits in this seat tomorrow, I'm going to be pretty mad because that's my seat. But it
Right,
creates that
exactly.
connection. Yeah. And I think too, we might have touched on this earlier, but like, even being able to step outside of the room and park my circle in the bottom left corner and just show that maybe I had to accept a quick phone call or run to the restroom. That's a social cue that just doesn't exist when you go on mute and turn off your camera and write BRB in the chat. Like now
Mhm.
it's a little less disruptive. Not everyone gets the chat notification, gets distracted. I can just park my circle outside of the room and show that, I'm taking a quick break and I'll be right back. And that way,
Exactly.
Ellen doesn't call on me either, and I'm, not there, right? So it eliminates that confusion of
Right.
attention versus engagement.
Exactly. Thank you for putting it so concisely. So I can move, because right now I'm covering some of my text. So obviously I can move myself to wherever I am, but I can also highlight. So if I wanted to draw attention to something for my students, I can simply use the whiteboard. I can make it nice and thick, and I can show them that this is what it is that I want them to talk about. I can give a check mark if they did something really great. Yeah,
So you
heart,
don't do
exactly.
hearts on your presentations, Ellen? That's weird.
Not always. I reserve that for very special presentations. But yeah, so you have options for colors. So you can, and your students also, correct me if I'm
Mhm.
wrong,
Yep.
can also comment, or so you can say, if there's something on this slide that you're not sure of, circle it. And they can do that. So they're not interrupting. They're not, yeah, exactly. What is Lions Quest? That's a whole nother presentation. So this allows your students to interact with the material. It allows you to constantly assess, are they paying attention to what I'm saying? Your students in your face-to-face classroom, in your in-person classroom, could be sitting behind a laptop and shopping. I mean, I'm sure a study has been done. I'm sure at some point in every single class that you are lecturing in, or having them do small group activities, someone is on Amazon
Yep.
buying something. That's my next going to be my next research study.
Guilty as
They
charged.
they very well might be doing that too while they're in space. They have other tabs open and they are shopping. We're not going to be able to prevent that completely, but I feel that in space gives us the opportunity to more closely mimic what happens in the classroom environment, so that we can help to draw those students in and keep their attention, and give them some explicit constructs for when they do fall behind and they realize, wait, I didn't mean to miss those last three instructions because I was adding things to my Amazon cart. I was hungry. I need some snacks. So we can give them the grace, and they can step outside of the classroom, ask another student. They can move themselves to a space. They can raise their hand. So there's opportunity. They can chat. We didn't mention the chat at all, but there is a chat where you can chat with everyone, or you can just chat with an individual student, which is perpetual. So if I miss class on Monday, I don't have to email the instructor and say, did I miss anything important? Did you do anything?
Mhm.
And me as instructor thinking, no, we just waited until you came back. So if I use my classroom space in Canvas, they can go in and see if there were any things in the chat. So as the instructor, maybe I'll post the agenda for the class, or there is a document that they need to work on. I can
Mhm.
put that in the chat, and then they can come in when they're feeling better and go to the chat and see what it is that they have missed.
Yeah, that's really nice. I also enjoy our little Giphy integration where you can ask the students to post how they're feeling, and they can use the slash and then write tired or hungry. And you get to liven up the classroom space with those fun little GIFs. So, not everything has to be super serious. We still want everybody having fun. It's great to download the syllabus. It's also great to see a gift from the office.
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
but I think to kind of close here on the presentation about your pilot experience, I'm curious if there's anything so far that surprised you about the pilot, or how maybe instructors were using in space, something that maybe you didn't think of going in, but came up as you started to experiment and play a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I really wasn't sure how the instructors or the students were going to respond, because it's something new. Why are you doing this to me? There's already something that I am used to using. We've been meeting in Zoom, or we've been meeting in Google Meet. Why are you going to introduce me to something new? But I haven't gotten any resistance in that regard. It's been, okay, let me try this. And very quickly people settle in. Oftentimes when I introduce this for the first time, people come in, they're like, oh wow. And you get a lot of, circles moving around until the point you're like, you need to stop, you're making me motion sick. But very quickly they settle in and they start to see, oh, there are definitely practical applications for using this. And I'm really excited to see where our instructors take it because, and I appreciate that InSpace is very open to suggestions. So there's been some things we're like, well, um, we're not sure this is going to work quite the way we want it to. And InSpace has been very amenable to some of the changes. One that I can think of off the top of my head, and perhaps you can speak to, Nicole, is a few students did say, I still want to be able to have a plain background, just a color. I don't want even to blur my background for whatever reason. And I'm pretty sure I read that that was on your roadmap of things to change.
Yeah, and it's institutions like TCNJ and the teams like Ellen's team that really do contribute to the future of this platform and the future of online learning. So it's items like that wouldn't have come up for us otherwise, but since they're actively using the platform and trying out new things, they're like, hey, why couldn't I change my background? And we're like, that's a great question. Let's put it on the roadmap and actually listen to our customers. What a novel idea. But I think that's why I'm so grateful to work at a company like this and in the company of professionals like Ellen and the team at TCNJ. It's just been so rewarding. Any last sort of thoughts on your pilot experience or what's to come maybe for TCNJ and areas that you're looking into the future for education?
Sure, we're really continuing to evaluate and how we want to roll it out. As I said, our online presence is still in its infancy and it's growing. So we'll see how InSpace plays along with that. And we'll continue to evaluate instructor and student preferences and use. One thing I like about InSpace a lot is it provides the administrator of the system, which would be me in this case, some back end data. So I can see which instructors are using it, how many students are using it, how long a session is. But you as an instructor can also have a running tab of, did your students come in? Did they come in and leave 2 minutes later? Did they stay? When I was talking to my colleague Karen, who ran the tutoring town hall, she also mentioned that they need to keep attendance. So it made it very easy. We're looking to expand it into our write-in, which happens at the end of the semester. It's a drop-in time for students to come in with their final papers, final assessments, and get some tutoring help. Previous to the pandemic, it was all in person. Obviously, it shifted, and the tutoring center discovered, and the writing program discovered, it worked really well online, even when students could be face to face, for the reasons that I mentioned with the office hours, and because students are lazy. They don't want to walk, they don't want to leave their rooms, they don't want to get out of their pajamas. Particularly during finals week, it's very easy to drop in. So attendance and participation in those write-ins have gone up since using them online, and they keep very detailed spreadsheets and have off back channel conversations between the tutors. And some of that I think InSpace can handle without them having to add in the extra tasks. So I'm excited to see how that goes. I'd like to see if somebody's interested in trying it for advising. Again, how can we connect students to the resources that we have on campus and encourage them to drop in without actually having to go anywhere? So that's really what our next level of experiment will be.
And I can't wait to see what you come up with. Thanks again, everyone tuning in to our presentation. If you have any questions at all, you can send Ellen or I a message. Here is our contact information. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nicole. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Woo! High five.